Hi everyone. Today we are going to talk about which visa is better, OCI or Indian visa. I am sure a lot of you who are planning to apply for either an OCI or an Indian visa are in this dilemma. And I assume you are aware about what an OCI and what an Indian visa is in detail. I will try to cover the process for applying for an Indian visa or OCI in a different video. In fact, I've already made one video for step-by-step detailed process for how to apply an OCI. And I have done this process myself for my daughter, twice, one for Indian visa and one for OCI. And I did this all analysis and I thought I will share it with all of you so that it can benefit whoever is thinking of applying for the same. So why don't we go ahead? So I've tried to do a side-by-side comparison, and I've tried to highlight which ones could be beneficial for you. I'll try to share some personal experiences or personal tips, and what I feel is better. And of course, whatever suits your own business case, you can decide accordingly. So we'll jump right onto it. So what is the purpose of an OCI? In fact, let me go to what the purpose of visa first is. So anybody who's traveling from one country to another needs a visa, right? So any foreign national who is entering India is required to have an international travel document in the form of passport and a visa. A visa could be a physical visa, any visa or visa on arrival. So that is what basically a visa is, that you need when you're traveling from one country to another, and when you're traveling into India, you need a visa. Now, what an OCI is, so if you see, a visa is for all the foreign nationals, but OCI is for an eligible foreign national, and it allows multiple entry permit into India. A lot of visas do. We will talk about it in detail in the coming video. But what it does is, and now, what is the definition of an eligible foreign national? You can go to this official website that I have shared here, ociservices.gov.in, and you will find who an eligible foreign national is. But at a high level, anybody who has roots connected to India. So, for example, the parents or grandparents or spouse is an Indian, and it is you're looking for citizenship like benefits because you cannot hold dual citizenship. So you can apply for an OC, and we will talk about all of this in detail. But it is like a permit for a foreign national who has some roots connected to India, and it allows multiple entries into India. And we will talk about a lot of other details about this in detail when we are comparing this. Now, what are different types of OCIs and visa? So if you see, again, I'll talk about a visa first. I'm sure all of you know, now this visa could be a physical visa, e-visa, or on arrival. Now, further, this could be for a tourist visa, a business visa, a medical visa, or an emergency visa, right? But OCI is, there is no different types to it. There's only one kind of OCI that you have to apply. Hence, it is a multi-purpose card or booklet. It is like a lifelong visa to visit India for any purpose. This visa, for example, you're visiting for tourism, you cannot do business. If you're visiting for medical visa, then you cannot do business again here, vice, on similar things. But this visa allows you to do everything except a few activities that have been listed down as that requires special permit. Again, you can find all of those details in ociservices.gov.in. And you can find all of these there. So in short, there is one type, multi-purpose, while there are different types of visas. Now, what is the application method? For OCI and for visa both, you have to apply online, but the difference is for a visa, you can apply only online in case of an e-visa. And why I am saying e-visa, because nowadays e-visa is very comfortable. So there is other visa, there is this physical visa for which you can send your documents to the office and you can get a physical visa also. But both the processes for which you have to apply online only. And for an OCI, you will ultimately have to visit the FRRO, Foreign Registrar's Office, physically once for application and then again for collection. But for visa, you don't need to do that. So for OCI, if you are located outside India, you would have to visit the designated embassy or linked FRO office there. And if in India, there are also designated FRO offices. There are around approximately 16 offices that you can visit. So that is why the difference is mentioned here, that for OCI, you will definitely need to visit physically, but for a visa, you can apply online. Your e-visa will be received on email, and visa can be stamped on arrival as well. And visa could be sent, physical documents could be sent, and then you could apply for that visa on once you reach the airport of your destination. Or there are some countries for which you do not need to even apply a visa, you can do that on arrival. But for a comparison with OCI, I think what we should compare is a long-term tourist visa, which is for 5 years with an OCI, and I'll talk about it why I am saying that. Now, another difference with respect to processing time. So an OCI normally takes 30 days from the date of acknowledgement of application on the online system. So the process is that you apply online, and then we will be talking about how to follow up for an OCI, right? So you'll have to visit the FRO office once your application is applied. Once you visited the OCI offices first time, then normally it takes 30 days, but it could even take more than that. In my personal case, it took around 60 days for the application for processing and receiving back the OCI card. Whereas if you see, an e-visa application takes only up to 3 working days, 72 hours for processing. Of course, there could be exceptions, special cases, but in a normal case scenario, so it could take up to 3 days. So this is a major difference. A visa could be done in 3 days, whereas an OCI takes 30 to 60 days normally. So if you do not have enough days in hand, you could apply for a visa considering other factors also. But if you have sufficient time in hand, you could apply for an OCI. Moving on to some other differences. So what is the lead time that is required for both of these? So for an OCI, you need to have a valid passport, right? So whichever country citizenship you currently have, that passport should have a validity of minimum six months at the time of submission. And this is the same case for visa as well, for a grant of e-visa or for a re-entry permit. Now, the second difference is from a lead time perspective. So for a visa, we are talking about OCI. So the visa has to be having a 3 months validity. So it cannot be a tourist visa or any other kind of visa that allows you temporary access into India. So it is like a residential permit, the long-term visa that you have, and it should at least have 3 months validity on the date of application. So you need to be very considerate when you are applying for OCI from India, that at least you have 3 months of Indian visa stamped on your passport. That should have 6 months. Now here, in case of visa, again, the difference is, while here you need to have 3 months visa validity, you just need to apply 4 days in advance before your date of arrival. So, you can apply online, and again, there are different types of visas. So for tourist and e-business visa, you need to apply for minimum 4 days. Here, in case of medical and conference visa also, you need to apply for minimum of 4 days in advance, but with the date of arrival within a window of 120 days, which means once you've applied, you have to travel within 4 days. You should have minimum of 4 days, and you should travel within a gap of 120 days. So this is an example that if you're applying on 1st September, then the arrival date has to be between 5th September to 2nd January. So if you see in this case, if you're applying from India, you need to have a 3-month validity on your visa. Here for OCI 3-month validity, for visa it just apply for minimum of 4 days in advance. Further moving on to what is what matters for a lot of people is the cost. So for OCI, if you are applying from outside India, the cost is US dollars 275 for each application or it is equivalent to $275 in local currency, and it can only be paid by a demand draft. So, if you're converting a PIO card into OCI card, then it is, $100 fees. But for a fresh application of OCI, it is $275 that need to be paid only by way of demand draft. However, if you are applying this from India, then the fees is 15,000 for a fresh application and 5,500 for conversion of PIO to OCI card, again by demand draft. And there is no online facility yet available. I just did the process recently from India, and there is still no online facility. So you'll need to have a demand draft made in the favor of, it is mentioned on the website, OCI website. Now, from a visa perspective, like I have been mentioning, there are different types of visas: visa, e-visa, visa on arrival, and then it could be business, tourist, medical. So this is actually country or territory specific. And here is a link that I've mentioned. I will paste a link in the description as well, that for your easy reference. So this fees depends on the country or territory from where you are applying for. Just to note, there are bank charges of 2.5% that will be charged, in addition to the visa fees. Now, this is the main difference. And while there are different fees for different types of visas, what I am highlighting is something that is comparable to an OCI. So if you are thinking of confused between applying for an OCI or a long-term visa, an OCI upfront would cost you $275, whereas an e-visa, which is a tourist visa, multiple entry for 5 years, would cost you only $80. So it is almost 1/3 of the cost of an OCI. So you might argue that this is lifelong, whereas this is only for 5 years. However, there are a few catches that we'll just talk about in a few minutes on this. But the upfront cost, here is the difference. It's $275 versus $80 for a long-term tourist visa. Now, how long is actually an OCI or visa applicable? Here is a big catch. So your OCI is applicable until every time you issue a new passport. So that is one condition, or up to 20 years of age. So up to 20 years of age, every time that you are renewing your passport, you'll have to get your OCI renewed as well. So which means if you are a minor, you are under 18 or 20 years of age. For example, in case of US, your passport has to be renewed every 5 years, which means even though OCI is meant for a long term, but you have to follow the process of renewal of visa every 5 years when your passport is getting renewed in case of a minor. So once you've attained, so between 20 to 50 years, there's no need to reapply. That is an advantage of an OCI. But as soon as you reach 50 years, that is when again you'll have to apply for a renewal of OCI with $25 as renewal fees. Now, how much is a visa valid for? So like I said, the tourist visa could be for 1 year or 5 years, right? So it could be valid for 365 days or 5 years from the from the date of grant of authorization. The tourist visa also allows you multiple entries, but here is a big catch that is flagged in red. Your stay in India cannot exceed 90 days. So here is a bigger difference. So even though if you see in case of minor, your visa and OCI would both be applicable for 5 years, because you would have to apply for a renewal of OCI again, and you would have to apply for a visa again. But you cannot stay in India for more than 90 days on a visa, whereas you can do that on an OCI. And that is why a lot of people who have plans to visit India for longer than 90 days, they will have to come back, and they should rather apply for an OCI, or because you'll have only 90 days on this visa, and which is the minimum time that you need to apply for an OCI from India. So depending on your case, if you are traveling for a longer term, you should have sufficient time in hand to apply for an OCI. Whereas for a visa, like I mentioned earlier, you can even apply 4 days before, but the only catch is you cannot stay more than 90 days. Okay, moving on to further benefits. So if you apply for an OCI, you are exempt from reporting to police authorities for any length of stay in India. What this means is if you have visited India um, for 90 days and you're planning to extend that, in case of a visa, you would have to visit the FRO office to get yourself registered that you're visiting for longer than 90 days and you want to plan to extend that, even though you cannot even do that in case of a visa. But for in case of OCI, you don't have to do that. So that is a huge benefit that you have with an OCI. Now, a catch here is that this process of visiting the FRO office in case of a visa is exempt for minors. So even if you stayed for 6 months and you have a minor who's visited India on this visa, you don't need to go and report to the FRO office, even officially. Another benefit with OCI is, like I've been mentioning, you can compare it to a dual citizenship. It is like giving you citizenship to India because your parents, spouse, or grandparents were an Indian. So it gives parity to the NRIs in different fields, economic, educational, except in case of acquisition of agricultural or plantation property. So even if you are an OCI, you cannot purchase agricultural or plantation properties in your name. The benefits of visa are, like I've mentioned, you just need 4 days to apply for a visa. That is the minimum turnaround time. The process overall is easier to apply a visa. If you see, you can just apply online. Your e-visa will come over an email, and when you visit the port, you can just get it stamped. Whereas for OCI, you have to apply at least 3 to 6 months in advance. You have to go twice to apply for it and even collect it. So that is a benefit that visa has. The process is very simple. Another major factor while choosing for OCI or a visa is the documentation. So if you see, just looking at this, there's a lot of documentation that is needed for OCI. But for visa, it is very simple. All you need to do is fill an online form, get your passport, just take your photos, and you are done with the visa. But for an OCI, you not only need all of these things, but you might need to send your e-signatures, thumbprints for minors. You would need a relationship or birth certificate that establishes, for a minor, that how is he related to the parents, and that birth certificate would need to get a postal. That itself is another time-consuming task that you would need to do. So you would need an address proof of where you're staying in India. If you're applying from India, you would need your parents or grandparents' passport, whoever is the root Indian. Root Indian means how the person or how the applicant is connected to an Indian. You would need marriage certificate, not only in case of a spouse, but even if you're applying for your children, you would need a marriage certificate. Spouse OCI card is required if you're applying for OCI as a spouse of Indian citizen or an Indian OCI card holder. Then there's another parental authorization form for minors that you'll have to get notarized. So even though there are a lot of documents, but there is nothing to worry. These documents, when you have sufficient time in hand, you can easily arrange and get all of those documents. But so that is where my recommendation comes in. Finally, at last, looking at all these benefits. So if you are coming or planning to come to India for a longer term, like you've moved permanently or planning to move back permanently for longer than 90 days, I think you should apply for an OCI. Whereas when should you apply for visa? Ideally, when your stay is going to be, you're sure it's going to be less than 90 days, you can apply for a visa because it's cheaper and it's simpler to apply. The turnaround time is also less. In fact, for minors also, when you're bringing them probably first time to India, you could apply for a visa, right? And even if you plan to stay for 90 days, longer than 90 days, because minors are exempt for visiting the FRO office, and this 90 days restriction does not apply to minors. So you can apply for a visa, and when your visa is expiring in the next 5 years, you can then plan to apply for OCA, and that way you will have a sufficient time. This is what I personally did myself for my daughter. So when we moved back from US to India, we applied for a visa. We just got the visa in a few days. And then when the visa and the passport was expiring, we first got the passport renewed, and then we applied for an OCI, and we were able to manage that and get OCI easily. It's not a difficult or something that you cannot do. It's just that it takes a bit of a time, much longer than a visa. Last thing, if you have some emergency trips that you need to plan because you have a shorter turnaround time, you should apply for a visa rather than OCI. Do not consider applying for an OCI because assuming this is an emergency, you need to travel in a few days or a few weeks, you might not get your OCI, and it might be very hard. That process is cumbersome if you plan to apply for OCI and visa at the end moment. So my recommendation is uh, think about it. If you have sufficient time in hand, if you are going to visit India multiple times for a longer duration, apply for an OCI. However, if you're planning for shorter trips, not long enough, and you want easy process, cheaper cost, visa is the best bet for you. I have made another video on how to apply for an OCI, a step-by-step guide, especially when you're applying from India. You may plan to look through that, but as of now, so this is what I have. I hope this is helpful. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, and I'll be happy to answer them if that helps. Thank you so much.